Hi everybody, Melissa from melissaversusfibromyalgia.com here, and welcome. However you are engaging with this content, I'm so glad that you are here. We are talking about pacing. I have been thinking increasingly about how to fine-tune it, how to use it better, to be more proactive. Specifically this year, I want to be really careful to avoid, hopefully, burnout at the end of the year, so that when we get to the end of the year, I can join my family on a trip overseas instead of being so burnt out I'm just waiting for a rest. So this problem of pacing when you're too sick to be normal but too well to be disabled, I call this passing. So I pass for well despite enormous daily limitations. There's also this prevailing attitude to fibromyalgia that we ought to push through or just get on with it, even amongst people with fibromyalgia. And I believe that attitude is what made me worse and why it took so long to get better. So in addition to the fibromyalgia and the chronic fatigue syndrome and the very bad periods, I was burnt out. Because it is exhausting living life these days anyway. We've got so many people who are recognizing that we can't live like this. We've got people opting out. We've got the quiet quitting. People who are just saying, at the end of the day, I'm finishing my work and that's it. I'm out. I'm not doing long hours anymore. We've got people realizing how important it is to avoid burnout. But when you are trying to strive, when you have limited energy and a lot of pain, it really amplifies it. It has taken about 10 years to clear through the burnout and figure out what are long-term symptoms and what were just short-term, not to mention, of course, the 4 pregnancies. Really, each one took me back. But now I face the problem of knowing that pacing is an internationally accepted treatment for chronic fatigue syndrome, but I struggle to be able to reduce my responsibilities enough to honor my personal energy envelope. So just for some context, what is pacing? At the most simplest, it means living within our energy means. So it means thinking about how we plan our day and how we use our energy, the rest to doing ratios. So it is a broad concept and it can encompass what I call the macro level. So how many hours we work or are active in the home, how long we spend out of bed each day, how much movement we can do, all of those kinds of bigger level things. And then the micro level, so our activity to rest ratios and our heart rate ratios. Now, I really enjoy using the heart rate level, and we're going to talk a little bit more about this as well. But none of these things are easy to figure out, and few of us are starting from a blank slate. So most of us are being diagnosed when we already have responsibilities. So many of the people in my groups are people with well-established responsibilities before diagnosis. So I've been diagnosed for a long time and I've had symptoms for almost my whole life. But even then, once I realized what was going on and started looking into pacing, I had those responsibilities in place. So unless you're very, very sick and you're forced to be bedbound, you've got to figure out how to work your journey in with your context. But there's a lot of us who are trying to do life with little understanding and no ability to really reduce things like the work hours and responsibilities down to the level we need it to be. I had to actually work really hard to get to a certain point in my career so that I could earn enough per hour to reduce the number of hours I did. And then even when I could reduce it a little bit, it wasn't really in line with my energy envelope. So it took me a really long time. But I do believe the beginning of my journey really started when I reduced how many hours I was working. So I went from full-time to what I call 3/4 time, so about 28 hours a week. And I reduced my commute. So I was doing about an hour each way on the bus, and I changed to driving, and I would drive half an hour each way, and that also made a big difference. I also learned how to rest properly, which again made a big difference, but we can go more into that. The problem with this whole pacing idea is that, there are some books, but most of us don't really get how to do it, and most of our health professionals don't know how to do it either. Mine was continually telling me not to reduce my work hours because she worried that I would still have the same symptoms but just less money. How wrong she was, but that's a whole other story. But I believe it becomes a question of what can we do? I love asking in every sense of this battle, what can we do right now? Because simple, sustainable changes help, they change. Every step we take in the direction of healing puts us a little forward. So in my pacing trainings, which are freely available on my website, melissaversusfibromyalgia.com, I take you through the key questions to ask yourself and help you to kind of come up with a macro level and a micro level and think of the things that you can alter right now. But at the most micro level, the place I've come to actually is monitoring my heart rate. And I have shared a blog post before about using my Fitbit to manage my health journey, and part of that is keeping an eye on my heart rate. So some resources suggest using the regular maximum heart rate calculation and then taking 50 to 60% of that, depending on our level of severity. So for example, 220 minus your age and then times 0.6 or 0.5 if you're more unwell. So for me, that's 110. But in 2022, I was working up to 120. So I could comfortably take a walk or do life up to 120 without immediate symptoms. I still had to be careful, so about 30 minutes was my maximum walk. I would end up with post-exertion malaise and pain, but that's where I was sitting at, and that's a really useful immediate feedback for us. After I got COVID at Christmas, I was back to 90, which is really difficult to maintain as a person I'm prone to moving fast. I've got 4 children to keep up with. It is very difficult to stay under 90. Carrying a 10-kilogram baby, walking up the stairs, putting washing on the line, it all, especially if you're more unwell and your fatigue is higher, it will spike your heart rate faster. So it does mean checking in, sitting down more often, taking things more slowly, really looking at your work to rest ratio. And it is hard and it is frustrating, but it really does make a difference. It's the difference between getting through the day or crashing. So I believe the key to managing beyond the day-to-day of life is learning how to manage the day-to-day of life better. So to leave enough ability behind for when a little extra is required, and to live in positive numbers rather than a deficit. And I think that's the problem. A lot of us just have that personality, and we become so used to living in deficit and thriving in deficit, and what we're doing is taking ourselves down, and we are taking away from all of our systems. So my mission this year is to steward the energy and ability I have better. So I want to take the easiest pathway possible. I want to end the day with a little left in the tank, which is difficult, and learn what to do less of and what to do more of. So really just ask those questions. Do I need to be doing this thing? Is this necessary? How much do I need to do it? Can I take help? All of those kinds of things. So for example, the morning is really difficult for me. I've got 4 small children. No matter how well I sleep, I feel a bit like a zombie in the morning. No matter how much preparation we put in, it's tiring. And so I said to my husband, is there any way you can help in the mornings? Knowing, of course, that if he starts work later, he comes home later. And he said, no, it's too difficult. They've got a lot of meetings that are scheduled and they work across time zones, so it's not easy. And so I left it at that and was kind of brainstorming in my head. And I came back to my husband and said, what about one day? And he said, actually, there probably are 2 days where I can make it work. So we're going to try having 2 days a week where my husband can help me in the morning and take a couple of the big kids out. So that's less energy taken from my tank and less stress on me first thing in the morning, which will save energy. The other thing is that for the first time ever, I've enrolled my little 2 children in daycare. So we've always done an in-home carer. But this last year she's been quite sick and not available as often, so that's how I ended up working alone with the kids a lot. And so she's closed her business and we're going to go into a daycare. My youngest 2 are 4 and nearly 2 years old. The nearly 2-year-old is very independent, very good at communicating what he needs and wants. He's not fully talking obviously yet, but he's quite a bolshy little guy, so I think he will suit it well. But I'm making sure that I have 2 days a week where I have solid childcare. It's very unlikely that a daycare centre closes down. It's just across the road. I can literally walk there in a minute with the kids, so I can jump back there if they need me. But it's a small centre and it's a brand new centre, so it means there aren't too many kids there, and I'm just open to giving it a go and seeing how it works. because when Everett is 2 years and 3 months, he can start going to the kindergarten that Nathaniel goes to. We love this kindergarten. My first son went there, my second son went there, and now the third one is there. So I'm fully open to it not working, but while it's there as an option, I'm really giving it a go. I'm really trying everything to make sure, because there's the stress of wondering if you have childcare, and also if I'm going to work for 4 or 5 hours, I need space to have a rest, and I need to not be rushing. Last year was such a sense of rush. You rushed the kids to where they need to be, you rush back to work, you rush, and I just felt like I was always running, and I don't need to live that way. So we're giving that a go, and I'm thinking through all those things. So there's quite a lot to it, and I give you these examples just to help you get a sense of what there is to kind of think through. But my pacing training goes through that further, so do check that out on the blog. But yeah, what I'm hoping is that I can pull out of the boom-bust cycle and the cortisol addiction of the overachiever. Many of us can identify with that. Because if I can manage my energy in the banal or the daily, then I can manage it when I'm having fun, because it's hard. If you know that you are tiring, you know that you need to stop, but you feel like you've got a little a little energy left in the tank, it's very hard to stop. But actually learning when to stop and when to take the break is the smartest thing we can do. I am so used to pushing to the edge and feeling sick before I stop, and that makes it so much harder to come back from. And that's something that I think we might need to enlist help of our people. This is something that's difficult to do because my husband is my husband and my kids are energizer bunnies. They want to go. And so I don't know how it'll go enlisting their help, but at least if I can get a sense of my boundaries and where I can ask for help and create kind of plans, hopefully I can avoid those crashes more often. But it's important, I think, to remember in the context of all these discussions is that I know my macro levels. I know when to be in bed. I take my yoga nidra guided meditation as my rest after lunch. That's my full stop rest break. I know my deep breathing and my stretching and keeping the parasympathetic nervous system activated when I can. I take the low-dose naltrexone, the quetiapine, the magnesium, and I try to reduce stress and all of that sort of thing. I've been on a long journey with my health, so I understand that all of this is complex, and if you haven't got any of those foundations in place, it's going to be more difficult. But again, coming back to just looking at your heart rate and monitoring your heart rate and keeping it at that level for now, that can be a nice way to really just ease into it. And so nothing is in isolation. This is a multi-system disease, and it requires a whole of life approach. And pacing is simply one part. But the beauty of it is all of these things impact each other. If you pace well, then you'll sleep better. I find for sure that if I've paced well and had a proper rest in the day and done my stretching, activated my parasympathetic nervous system, it's easier to go to sleep and stay asleep and have deep sleep. And when you have better sleep, you have less pain and it's easier to pace, and it's just all a wonderful cycle if you can get into the right track. And it does start with small steps. So I offer the heart rate method as one way to introduce some pacing and one small step. Let me know, have you tried it? Will you try it? If you want to share your journey with us, come and join the Melissa versus FMS/CMS, CFS, Facebook group, Melissa versus FMS CFS. So that's the shorthand of fibromyalgia syndrome and chronic fatigue syndrome. But that Facebook group is there. It's where I'm sharing more information as we go, and more of a kind of daily, not daily, but a more regular update, because it is, when you're a busy person, some things have to go, and so it's not as easy to get time to film videos or write out full blog posts. And well, writing a blog post is only the beginning of that. There's so many things involved, and so at a basic level, I just want to connect and share this information, and I'm doing that more in this group, and also in my membership group. So I have a Pay What You Can membership group, where you join the Facebook group and connect in that way, and then we also have the members group and a vault of resources. So I put extra special PDF compilations with lots more information. It's more long form supported content, more yoga, more meditation. That's the way that I can support you better, and that you can also support me in doing this work. I hope you liked this. If you did, please feel free to share it with someone who you think could benefit, and I'll catch you again soon.